Hey guys, today I just wanted to compare what I think are probably two common two-stage triggers. So in this one I have the Geissele SD-E. You may have seen that in my silent trigger pull video before. And in this lower I have the Timney Targa trigger. So just give a quick description. These are both two-stage. These are both the straight trigger bow. The Geissele is more of a flat front face on that trigger bow. The Timney has a little bit of a curve to it, not much, but a slight curve. Both of them are set at about the same point in the little cutout for the trigger bow to go through, meaning your length of pull to the trigger, from the back here to the trigger is going to be about the same for both of these. I know that the CMC two-stage actually moves the trigger bow further forward. So if you're looking for a trigger that's going to increase this distance because you feel like it's too short in the AR, then you can do two things. You can get a trigger that moves the bow further up, and you can get a grip that sort of moves a little back strap further back, and that'll sort of increase your length of trigger pull there. Anyway, getting right into it, the Geissele goes in like a regular mil-spec trigger. It's not designed like a mil-spec trigger, but it does go in. You have a hammer and a hammer spring, you have a trigger and a trigger spring, and then you have inside a disconnector and a disconnector spring. So because of this, it sort of works like a mil-spec trigger. You have the three separate springs and three separate parts all held in by the trigger pins. So you can have a full power hammer spring and then play around with the trigger spring, and obviously you can play around a little bit with the disconnector spring a little bit as well. So I feel like Geissele's able to get a lighter trigger pull and still have reliability. One of the downsides to the Geissele trigger is because it is designed like this and it's not a self-contained unit like the Timney. Different lowers, are going to have different tolerances. So maybe these trigger holes aren't drilled exactly right in your lower, and your trigger pull may suffer with the Geissele, and that's not because the trigger's bad, it's just because the lower wasn't milled correctly. So a little overview on that one. And a little different on this one. This is a self-contained unit. You can see this is the short two-stage trigger. It just basically drops right in. Unlike the Geissele, you can see the purple or blue hammer spring, and that wraps around on both sides and the tails come back. And then if you see the little stainless pin in there, there's a stainless pin right here, it goes all the way through over here, and the tail of that hammer spring lays across it. That's what's going to give you your first stage pull weight, and of course some of the sear engagement as well. But I'm not going to click the trigger, but just put it on fire, and you can see by pulling the trigger here, that little pin raises the tail of the spring, the hammer spring, and that gives you your first stage pull weight. And your second stage pull weight is determined again by the sear engagement and that disconnector spring. So works a little different than the Geissele two-stage. Because it is made as a single unit, Timney is able to tune this trigger better in their warehouse before they ship it out to you. So they know exactly what it's going to feel like when you drop it in. It's not determined by the specs of your lower receiver. It's all determined by Timney, in the manufacturing process. So which one do I like better? It's not that simple, I guess you'd say. So the Geissele trigger, I think they do a really good job of making a very, very smooth trigger. They leave a mil-spec hammer spring in here so you get reliable ignition. I think it's something like, overall it's 2.3 pounds on the first stage and 1.2 on the second. So overall it's a 3.5 pound trigger. I don't have a pull gauge, but we can just assume that's correct, I guess. I don't really know. I can't test that, but we'll assume. So that means this first stage here, that's 2.3 pounds according to Geissele. Very smooth. So that actually feels real nice. And then when you pull through it, notice the amount of trigger movement. I'm going to pull it up against the wall. Now watch the trigger movement after. So I'll do that again. So because they have to accommodate all the possibilities that might happen on a lower receiver, the break is actually a little longer. So I mean, I'm not complaining. It's a very good break. The first stage is very smooth. The break is very clean and smooth, and there's a nice reset on it. But it's just a little longer. So, but I do like the smoothness of this trigger quite a bit, and this is actually on my Precision AR. This is more of a hunting AR, and I'll show you that first stage. This is the short model, so it looks a little shorter than the Geissele, but it is not as smooth. Now, having said that, this trigger is pretty much brand new. I've had it in this rifle for about 3 days, haven't even fired it yet. Just dropped it in, and I've been dry firing it a lot, just trying to get it to smooth out. They don't recommend using any grease or oil on it, so I have just been dry firing it and hitting with some compressed air to get any little, shavings out of there, and just keep dry firing it. And it has smoothed up since I first installed it, but it's still not super smooth. So hopefully that'll continue to smooth up. There's the first stage. Now watch the distance after I pull through the second stage. So to me, it feels a little shorter. A little shorter than the Geissele, in my opinion. The first stage, second stage, but it is a little heavier. So this one is advertised as a 2-pound first stage and a 2-pound second stage, which is 4 versus the 3.5. So it makes sense that it feels a little heavier than the Geissele. And I do think that the actual break, when you pull through the second stage, is a little shorter and cleaner on this one, but it's heavier, so it's a trade-off. So if you don't mind, if you have a steady trigger finger, the Geissele's probably would be more appreciated by you. If you like very minimal over travel and the cleanest break possible, the Timney trigger might be a little better for you. But just keep in mind, it is going to be a little bit heavier. Not that it's super heavy; it's like 4 pounds total, but heavier than the Geissele. Just to see a comparison between the two. Hopefully this was helpful. I guess if I had to pick one, I would probably pick the Geissele. I do like the smoothness over the and the lightness over the Timney. Not that the Timney's bad. I guess I just really can't stress that. I mean, we're talking about two very high-end triggers here, so it's kind of like nitpicking. So I don't want people to watch this video and then think, oh, the Timney's gritty, because that's not the case. It's just a little heavier and not quite as smooth. Calling it gritty would be incorrect. You can just feel the sear surfaces, they're not polished as much, so you can sort of feel a little bit of rubbing. But it's brand new, so hopefully that'll polish out and I'll do an update on this trigger. But yep, so I hope this was helpful. Anyway, y'all take care and Happy New Year.